On the afternoon of August 17th, 1966, two men climbed a lonely hill overlooking the Brazilian city of Niterói. They wore formal suits, they carried raincoats, they carried a bottle of water, and inside one of their pockets was a handwritten note containing instructions that would eventually become one of the greatest mysteries in Brazilian history. The note read, "At 4:30, be at the determined location. At 6:30, ingest capsules. After the effect, protect metals. Await the signal. Mask." Hours later, both men would be dead. There were no wounds, no signs of violence, no indication that anyone had attacked them. Lying beside them were strange masks made entirely of lead. Nearly 60 years later, nobody knows exactly why they climbed that hill. Nobody knows what they were waiting for. And perhaps the most disturbing question of all, did they die expecting to witness something extraordinary? August 1966. Brazil was changing rapidly. Cities were growing. Technology was advancing. Television, radio, and electronics were becoming part of everyday life. Across the bay from Rio de Janeiro sat the city of Niterói. Busy streets, crowded buses, markets, shops, ordinary people living ordinary lives. And above the city rose Morro do Vintém, a quiet hill, overgrown, remote, a place few people would ever notice, yet it would soon become the center of one of Brazil's strangest mysteries. The men who climbed the hill were not criminals, they were not adventurers, they were not explorers. Their names were Manuel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel José Viana. Both men worked as electronics technicians. They repaired radios, they understood electrical systems, they worked with circuits, signals, and communication equipment. They had families, friends, careers. By every account, they lived ordinary lives. But there was another side to their interests. Some reports later suggested that the men were fascinated by spiritualism, scientific experiments, and the possibility that certain phenomena existed beyond conventional understanding. In the 1960s, such ideas were far from unusual. Space exploration had captured the world's imagination. Radio signals crossed continents. Humanity had begun listening to the stars. For some people, science and spirituality began to merge, and perhaps Manuel and Miguel had begun searching for answers that ordinary life could not provide. On the morning of August 17th, the two men left their hometown of Campos dos Goitacazes. They told their families they were traveling to purchase electronic equipment. Nothing about the trip seemed unusual. They carried money, they boarded a bus, and they traveled toward Niterói. Several hours later, they arrived. Witnesses would later recall seeing the men making purchases. They bought raincoats. They purchased bottles of water. One witness later said that Miguel appeared nervous. He repeatedly checked his watch, as if he were worried about time, as if he had an appointment, as if something important was going to happen. And according to the note later found beside their bodies, he did. 4:30, 6:30. Specific times, specific instructions. The men were not wandering. They were following a plan. As the afternoon progressed, Manuel and Miguel began climbing Morro do Vintém. The hill was not easy terrain. The climb was steep. The vegetation was thick. The weather had begun to change. Yet the two men continued upward wearing formal business clothes and waterproof coats. They also carried something that has never been adequately explained: two masks made of lead, not full masks, not helmets, only eye coverings, simple pieces of curved lead designed to shield the eyes. Why would two electronics technicians carry lead masks? What did they expect to see? What did they believe would happen after sunset? Those questions remain unanswered. 3 days later, a local boy climbed the hillside to fly his kite. He was not searching for missing people. He was not investigating anything. But high on the slope, he noticed something unusual. 2 bodies, lying side by side. The authorities were called. Reaching the site proved difficult. Eventually, investigators climbed the hill. What they discovered seemed almost impossible. The 2 men lay peacefully, both dressed in identical formal suits, neckties, and waterproof raincoats. Neither showed signs of violence, no blood, no struggle, no obvious injuries. Placed over their eyes were the lead masks. Beside them lay a notebook. Inside was the message, a few lines, a few instructions, words that would become famous. Take capsules, protect metals, await signal, mask. It was as though the men had been following a ritual, or an experiment, or a set of instructions given by someone else. The note became the center of the entire investigation. At 4:30, be at the determined location. At 6:30, take capsules. After the effect, protect metals, await signal, mask. Investigators immediately focused on one word: capsules. What capsules? No capsules were recovered. No container was found. No clear explanation existed. If the men had taken something, the question became, what and why? Unfortunately, decomposition had already begun. The autopsy could not provide definitive answers. Toxicological evidence was lost. The most important evidence in the case may have disappeared forever. One possibility is accidental poisoning. Perhaps the capsules contained drugs. Perhaps the men were experimenting with altered states of consciousness. Perhaps they expected visions. Perhaps they expected contact. Instead, the substances may have killed them. Another theory suggests a spiritual ritual. Some reports connected the men to groups interested in paranormal phenomena. Could they have climbed the hill expecting communication with something beyond ordinary human understanding? Others proposed a scientific experiment. After all, both men were technicians. The reference to signals, the reference to metals, the masks, the timing, everything suggested preparation. But preparation for what? And then came the theory that would make the case internationally famous: UFOs. Several witnesses in the area later reported seeing strange orange lights in the sky. Suddenly, the mystery seemed almost designed for speculation. 2 technicians, a mountain, masks, signals, lights. But despite decades of speculation, no evidence has ever proven that extraterrestrial phenomena played any role in their deaths. The UFO theory survives because the case feels impossible, not because it explains it. Imagine the scene: the city lights below, the hill growing dark, 2 men sitting quietly, watching their watches, waiting. 4:30. They reach the location. Time passes. 6:30. They take the capsules. Perhaps they feel something. Perhaps they begin to believe. Perhaps they become afraid. Perhaps they become excited. The note says, after the effect, protect metals, await signal, mask. They place the lead coverings over their eyes. They look toward the sky. And then, nothing, or something. No one knows. No witness saw their final moments. No one heard their last conversation. No one knows what they believed was about to happen. The years passed. The investigation ended. No final answer was ever reached. The lead masks became symbols. The note became famous. The hillside became a place of mystery. And the deaths of Manuel Pereira de Cruz and Miguel José Viana entered Brazilian history. Not because of violence, not because of murder, but because every piece of evidence seems deliberate. The suits, the raincoats, the note, the schedule, the capsules, the masks. Everything suggests preparation. Yet nobody knows what they were preparing for. Today, the lead mask's case remains unsolved. No one knows why the men climbed the hill. No one knows what the capsules contained. No one knows why the masks were necessary. No one knows what signal they were waiting for. And perhaps the most disturbing possibility is this. What if Manuel and Miguel knew exactly what they expected to see? What if they climbed that hill willingly? What if they believed they were standing on the edge of a revelation? The hill remains silent. The masks reveal nothing. The note explains everything and nothing. And somewhere on a lonely Brazilian hillside, two men may have died waiting for something that never arrived. Or perhaps something did arrive, and only they ever saw it. Because sometimes history leaves behind mysteries that refuse to die. And sometimes the most terrifying secrets are not hidden by governments, not buried in files, not locked away in vaults. Sometimes they are carried to the top of a hill by two ordinary men who never come back down.